In this video, I take a walk through La Candelaria in Bogota, Colombia, the artistic, cultural, and historical heart of the city. Home to many of Bogota's museums, art galleries, and colonial buildings, it's a neighborhood that tells the story of Colombia's history.
Hola, bienvenidos a Bogota, Colombia. Welcome to Bogota. Before I forget, please hit the subscribe button if you have not already, and the like button if you're digging the content. In this video, I'm going to give you a tour of an area of Bogota called La Candelaria. It is the cultural, artistic, and historic heart of Bogota. So, I know a lot of you watching the channel are young single men, and you're probably wondering why the F you would want a architectural historical tour of Bogota. Well, number one, because if you are coming here to visit, it is not a bad place to stay. I'm staying just a few blocks outside the center of the historic district, and I am quite happy with the place that I'm in, the building that I'm in, and the $25 a night that I'm paying. And number two, because when you're visiting foreign countries like this, as frequently as I do, you start to get used to culture shock. And the best way to deal with culture shock in a foreign country is to understand that culture. And the best way to understand the culture is through a country's history. And so, on this tour, we're starting here at a monument called Chorro de Quevedo, Quevedo's fountain. And it marks the site where Spanish conquistadors first established the center of Bogota. Now, why is that important? Well, Westerners, particularly those of us from the United States, tend to have a very naive, very narrow view of Latin America. But when you start visiting these countries, you'll quickly realize the United States does not have a monopoly on racism. The racism in Latin America and the economic disparities between the rich and poor in Latin America dates back to the era of Spanish conquest and the Spanish conquistadors. And so I always think it's important, particularly in Latin American countries, to visit these colonial era monuments, because the problems that began with Spanish conquest are still, the racial problems are still palatable in the culture today. So it's a way to begin to understand the culture of Colombia and all of Latin America, really. Another thing I want to point out is that I am doing kind of a touristy thing. And I've got my Pablo Escobar hat on, silver or lead, the decision is yours, and my narco traficante gafas, my drug dealer glasses. They're a bit touristy, but they do serve a purpose, and they act as a sort of body armor for me. At 50 years old, thank God I'm still pretty fit, so much so that a lot of my expat friends here say I look like an FBI agent or CIA agent or a Marine of some sort. And I find that the more I look like a military guy, the less people here fuck with me. The other thing you'll probably notice already is that I am way out of breath. I am at a lung collapsing 8,500 feet right now. And it's also why I'm starting this tour of the neighborhood at the top of the hill. But even that small incline a small little hill that I just had to crest. It's really, really made me out of breath. But now I'm on the descent, so hopefully I won't be huffing and puffing as much. So I'm going to give you my kind of personal tour of this neighborhood. I've walked it for the last 3 days in a row and familiarized myself with some of the important landmarks and a few little spots that if you're staying in this neighborhood, you might want to pop into for food or drinks. So you can see all the colonial era architecture here, which is always, I guess you'd say, like a blessing and a curse in these countries. These districts, these neighborhoods are usually the most beautiful to look at, but they do remind the population and the tourists who are paying attention of all the strife and all the trouble that came along with Spanish conquest. So we're walking down this hill towards Plaza Bolivar, which was named after Simón Bolivar, who was instrumental in liberating several Latin American territories, now countries, from Spanish rule. And he did so for Colombia in about 1830 something, the early 1800s. So the history that we're looking at in this neighborhood spans from the early to mid 1500s. 1538 is when the Spaniards established the center of Bogota, right around where that fountain was, to the early 1800s when Colombia won its independence from Spanish rule. Okay, here's one of the, if you are in this neighborhood and you get tired of all the touristy hullabaloo and you want to pop into somewhere a little more civilized and a little more modern, then here's one of the places. It's a Selena hostel, and Selena is a brand name of hostels around the world that I would say they're like the millennial hostel version of glamping. If you're lazy and don't want to look for an Airbnb bargain or like a co-living space or somewhere a little more, I guess you'd say personal, then these Selena hostels have got you covered. And there is one right here in the center of La Candelaria, although I checked the rates here the other night. For a private bedroom with a shared bathroom, it was $60 US per night. Something like that. It was $250 for 4 nights, so pretty spendy. So we're passing Museo Botero, which houses most of Colombia's fine artworks and is named after the famous Colombian artist Botero. And the place sees about 500,000 visitors a year, which speaks to a larger idea here that this historical district is rather busy with tourists year-round, unlike some historical districts in other cities that I've been to in other countries that where the crowds are kind of thin. Now this place is jam-packed and has plenty of interesting reasons to visit. Not only for the art and history, but also for the food and tourist shopping, I guess you would say. And you know, it's some of the streets are barricaded like this. It's kind of like what Southeast Asia would call a walking street. Some of the streets around here are closed to automobile traffic, so it's a nice place to walk around and see Colombia on a Sunday afternoon. I'm gonna make a reel someday of all the people that are bombing my videos in the background. Seems to happen more frequently here in Colombia than any other place. Most people seem overjoyed when the camera passes by. So we are approaching the bottom of the hill here and getting close to Plaza Bolivar, which has a super interesting mix of architecture, from colonial era stuff like a colonial era cathedral to neoclassical architecture, for those of you interested in architecture. And donkeys. I think that's a donkey. Or is it a llama? I'm no farmer. In any case, you don't see that every day. So here is this colonial era church or cathedral. I popped inside and got some footage of the ceiling, which is quite elaborate. So this is it. This is Plaza Bolivar. And this place really goes off on Colombian Independence Day, which happened not too long ago, a couple months back in June or July, I believe. It is where Colombians celebrate their independence from Spanish rule. And so the plaza is named after Simón Bolívar, who liberated not only Colombia, but several other Latin territories from Spanish rule in the early 1800s, and gave the country its freedom to do things like this. That's gonna wrap up this video. I hope you enjoyed it. Again, please hit the subscribe and notifications buttons, and I will see you in the next video. ¿Qué es eso?
Chicha.
Chicha? I know leche.
No.
No leche? Okay. Alcohol?
¿Ah?
Alcohol?
El alcohol que trae es fermento normal natural.
Okay. Fermento natural. Okay.
Dices, ¿dos animal con una?
No. ¿Cómo te llamas?
¿Ah?
¿Cómo te llamas?
Juan.
Juan? Muchas gracias.